Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Hello, this is Maynard. You're listening to the Skeptic Zone, episode number 839 for the 3rd of November 2024. Where is Richard Saunders, you ask? Well, it's a place where sick people go to get better and there's doctors. No, that's not right. But where is he? Where is he? In fact, 3 people asked me that just yesterday. I think he owed them money. Well, Richard is lost somewhere up in Oregon, which is a tasty herb that you can have in a stew. He's up in Oregon at the moment, but unfortunately he's come down with COVID-19. Apparently he hasn't got COVID-20 the way everyone else has got, but it's COVID-19, and I bet he's hiding in some Bigfoot cave or something with an enormous bottle of Brian Dunning. Look, sorry to hear unwell, Richard, and get well soon. But what's on the show, I hear you say? Go on, say it. I knew you'd ask that. Coming up on this week's episode of The Skeptic Zone, the Loons from Canada. They're crazy. They are. They wear shorts in the shower. The Loons from Canada have a Halloween quiz. Kate the Inquisitor will be... Oh, didn't know that about her. Kate the Inquisitor will be giving urban legend summaries. Oh, okay, rightio. Oh, right, how I've got that nickname, Mr. Tic Tac. That would be... I'd like to know how that happened. Anyway, start again, mate. I'll start from that. Kate the Inquisitor will be giving urban legend summaries, asking Allie and the listeners to decide if they're total works of fiction or if they have a basis in reality, much like Richard Saunders himself. Following that, it's guest reporter Rob Palmer with more interviews from CSIcon Las Vegas. Did anyone else get COVID? Let's get that COVID list going. I hope everyone's still well from the whole thing. Richard probably caught it on one of the many planes he takes all over the place. But following that, guest reporter Rob Palmer with more interviews from CSIcon Las Vegas, including the famed mentalist Banachek. Banachek, I've looked him up. He has quite a history. Did you know that Banachek is a Polish-American freelance Boston-based private investigator who solves seemingly impossible thefts? He collects from the insurance companies 10% of the insured value of the recovered property. Now, one of Banachek's verbal signatures is a quotation of strangely worded yet curiously cogent Polish proverbs. For example, a truly wise man never plays leapfrog with a unicorn. That's Banachek, and I believe he hangs out with McLeod and Columbo, and occasionally he catches William Shatner as the murderer. As well as Banachek, there's the anti-creationist YouTuber Forrest Valkai, and Brazilian science writer Natalia Pasternak. That's right, Natalia Pasternak, the science writer. That means if, the Cosmos is having a big party or something, she takes all the booze there. I think she might be, Richard, the science writer, Natalia Pasternak. But then again, if there's a science writer, I'll have half a bottle. Then to round off the show, Richard goes back to the TROVE Archives to look for references to spirit channelers. Spirit channelers, I'm sensing a top-shelf Voc, maybe a parfait de more or an avocado-based ingredient. Anyone can do that. That's right. As I said, looking for spirit channelers. Well, let's get on with the show. That's right. I'm going to go in the kitchen, look around, realise the rent's 3 weeks late, and then run away really quickly. That's me. We can't all have exciting lives downstairs like Richard Saunders.
It's the Loons from Canada. Here's Kate and Allie.
Hello, it's Kate and Allie coming to you from Alberta, Canada. Hello, Allie.
Hey, Kate, how you doing?
I am awesome, and I'm so happy to be chatting with you again in the same province.
Yay! Yes, I am back in the country.
It's my favorite time of year. Autumn is here in the Northern Hemisphere, and that means it's spooky season. I assume that you know that Halloween evolved from Samhain.
Yes.
Which is a festival from the early Celtic calendar that marked the Celtic New Year. It translates to summer's end. In the Southern Hemisphere, some celebrate Samhain on April 30th, and some celebrate October 31st to keep with the North American tradition. I personally love Halloween, so I would celebrate both times. And I think that they get two Halloweens because nothing is spooky about spring, especially in Australia, where they keep huntsman spiders for pets. Nothing scares those folks, but we can try. So you know nothing about what we're talking about today.
I know nothing. So we're going to do this again, are we?
We're doing this again. Are you ready for another quiz?
Oh, absolutely.
All right. You have not seen any of these questions.
Nope.
And you don't even know the topic.
I have no idea. I'm guessing it has something to do with Halloween, though, based on how you started. Just call me psychic.
Well, you know, it's that time of year and I'm in my little spooky vibe. And I don't know about you, but in my opinion, the best urban legends have a basis in reality.
Mm-hmm.
So today, the Inquisitor will be giving you some urban legend summaries, and it's your job to decide if they are full fiction or based on actual accounts that happened. Please be advised that some of these urban legends may be creepy, spooky, or disturbing for some listeners. For those brave enough who remain, put on your critical thinking tiaras because the quiz begins now.
Okay, got my tiara on, and it's blue.
Love it. Number 1, the spider bite. In the 1970s, a modern urban legend began emerging in Europe. It featured a young woman being bitten on the cheek by a spider while on a tropical vacation. The bite kept swelling until it burst open, revealing hundreds of tiny spiders growing inside her cheek. Is it fact or fiction?
It's yucky.
Of course it's yucky.
Oh boy, I'm going to say fiction.
You would be correct. According to arachnid experts, no self-respecting spider will lay its eggs on or in a human, a fact that roots this story squarely in the realm of lore.
Oh, interesting. How does something like that even get started?
Do you want this to be a 3-hour show? Question number 2. This next one predates cell phones and terrified young babysitters for generations. The call is coming from inside the house. For those unfamiliar with this legend, a teenage girl is babysitting at night. The children have been put to bed upstairs and the babysitter is downstairs watching television. The phone rings and the caller asks, "Have you checked the children yet?" The teen dismisses the call and goes back to watching TV. The anonymous caller dials back several times. Eventually, the babysitter calls the police, who inform her they will trace the next call. After the stranger calls again, the police return her call, advising her to leave the house immediately. She evacuates the home, and the police meet her outside. They explain that the calls were coming from inside the house, and that the unidentified prowler was calling her after killing the children upstairs. Is it fact or fiction?
I sure hope it's fiction. That's horrific.
Have you not heard that one before?
It rings like a movie. There's a bit in my head that says that this was a movie, and that's where I've heard it from, not from reality. So I'm going to say fiction again.
Well, I do believe that several movies touch on this urban myth.
Yeah.
But this story has been embellished and changed over time and is based on fact.
Wow.
Janet Crispin was 13 years old when she was hired to babysit 3-year-old Gregory Romanek in March of 1950. At 10:35 p.m., the local police department received a call from the girl screaming, "Come quick!" before the line cut out. Unfortunately, in the 1950s, technology did not exist for them to trace the call, and there was nothing they could do as they could not identify the caller. The Romaks called home before 11 p.m., but did not get an answer. When they returned home at 1:30 a.m., they opened their front door to a pool of blood. Janet was pronounced dead at the scene. She had been raped and then strangled to death. She had struggled with her attacker significantly before succumbing. The porch light had been turned on and the phone had been pulled out from the wall, likely disconnecting while Janet was attempting to call for help. Fortunately, little Gregory Romanek was found upstairs still asleep in his bed. While there is a suspect in this case, it has never officially been solved.
So it actually flipped. The legend and the lore flipped it. Wow. Okay, so one right, one wrong.
All right, well, you better get this one right.
Uh-oh.
But this was something I heard constantly as a child. Swallowing watermelon seeds will make a watermelon grow inside you. I had to lighten it a little up.
I would say that that is not based on any reality, that it never happened.
It is fiction. No harm will come to you if you swallow seeds. However, if any of the listeners answered fact, because they had heard about the man who inhaled a pea and it sprouted in his lungs, you get a point.
Never heard of that one.
In 2010, Ron Speeden and his doctors were astonished to discover that what they thought was a tumor growing in his lung was actually a 1.25 centimeter, or about 1 inch, plant that had sprouted from an inhaled pea that went down the wrong way when he was eating.
I did not know that would even be possible.
See, I knew that was possible, which is why I put it in the quiz. And any listeners who were smart like me, they get a point.
There we go. And I get a point still because
it was actually fiction. Yes, you got it right.
Yeah.
But if anyone is like, nah, I know about the guy who had a pea plant growing in his lungs, they get a point.
There we go. Very nice.
Because it won't make a watermelon grow in your stomach. I mean, we eat seeds all the time, like sesame seeds and sunflower seeds. And guess what? We don't have a garden growing in our bellies.
Right.
He inhaled it. It went down his trachea instead of his esophagus, and plant actually grew.
I'm guessing he had breathing trouble then.
Yeah, and they thought he actually had a tumor.
Yeah.
They thought he had lung cancer.
Yeah.
The dark, moist conditions of his lungs were enough to, cause the plant to grow.
Amazing.
Question number 4. Parents have to check your Halloween candy for razor blades, poison treats, and or drugs.
Well, I do know that it is an urban legend, that it's not true. However, I also know that it has happened a couple times, but it's been the parent trying to kill their own kids.
You're so smart.
Well, I know Ben Radford and Celestia Ward and Pascual Romero have covered that on their Squaring the Strange podcast. So that's where I learned that.
For those who don't know, this is, you're right, total fiction, just a way for the parents to get their pick of the best treats. It's a parent conspiracy, I'm convinced.
Yeah.
But I found a lot of really interesting information. The Halloween candy scare began in the 1970s. An op-ed piece that ran in the New York Times on October 28th, 1970, suggested the possibility of strangers using Halloween trick-or-treats to poison children. The editorial mentioned 2 unconfirmed incidents in upstate New York and offered a series of frightening rhetorical questions. The author, Judy Klemsrud, sorry if I said that wrong, Judy, wondered, for example, if that plump red apple from the kindly old lady down the block may have a razor blade hidden inside. Some readers accepted the questions as a definitive fact. Days later, a 5-year-old child died on Halloween in Detroit after consuming heroin. Early media reports cited his uncle's claim that he'd been exposed to the drug tainted in candy. By mid-November, it was revealed that the child had in fact found the heroin at his uncle's home, not in a bag of Halloween treats, as investigators had initially been told. However, on October 31st, 1974, 8-year-old Timothy O'Brien died in Houston, and this time the death was a result of eating poisoned candy. He died after eating a pixie stick that was later found to be laced with cyanide. Investigations into the boy's death concluded that he had actually been poisoned by his own father, who was deeply in debt and had taken out a substantial insurance policy on him. The story of the Houston Candyman killer quickly metastasized, though it had no evidence. Newsweek magazine asserted in 1975 that, quote, over the past several years, several children have died and hundreds have narrowly escaped injury from razor blades, sewing needles, and shards of glass put into their goodies by adults, end quote. By the 1980s, some communities banned trick-or-treating, while in other areas, hospitals offered to X-ray Halloween candy. Joel Best, a University of Delaware sociology and criminal justice professor, has researched reports of Halloween candy tampering in the U.S. dating back to the 1950s and could not find a single incident of a child being killed or seriously injured from a contaminated treat given out by a stranger. So there you go. I did not know all that.
I knew about the boy killed, but I did not know about the life insurance policy.
Yeah.
Or I'd forgotten about it, at least.
I don't think that was widely reported.
We're on question number 5, right?
Question number 5. The murderer, with or without a hook for a hand, who attacks couples making out on Lover's Lane. Is it fact or is it fiction?
I remember in a book reading that story, and I always thought it was total fiction. So I'm going to go with that.
Oh, Adrian. This may seem like a myth born from purity culture, but it is based in fact.
Oh, wow.
This following list is far from extensive. I found Lover's Lane killers in America dating back to 1923, which is over 100 years ago, when serial killer Charles Barr targeted couples at Lover's Lanes in Memphis, Tennessee. There was a killer stalking Lover's Lanes in 1946 in Texas, the killings of a Santa Barbara couple in 1963. Looking outside of the USA, an 18-year-old man was murdered while at a Lover's Lane with his girlfriend in Melbourne in 1980. There's $1 million reward for information leading to an arrest in that case. The Monster of Florence was a serial killer active in Italy between 1968 and 1985 who murdered 16 victims, usually young couples secluded in a wooded area during new moons. I even discovered a case in tiny Nanaimo, British Columbia from 1962. Of course, the Mounties always get their man, but it took 3 years.
Wow, I had no idea that that was such a common thing.
Yeah, these were all couples that were killed or attacked on Lover's Lane by strangers.
That's new meaning to that story. I just always thought it was sort of like a spooky story, right? It was a favorite campfire story.
It's been a trope in movies now.
Oh yeah, it's been in a lot of TV shows. And I think it's really interesting because the original story that I remember, the guy had a hook.
Yes, the hook on his hand when we were kids, and it scraped down side of the car. And just adds a creep factor in.
Exactly.
All right, question 6. Going to Australia now for the legend of the panthers and other mysterious big cats that have been a staple of Australian folklore for nearly 200 years and predates Europeans importing exotic felines to Australia. Do these big cats really roam in the Blue Mountains and Victorian regions?
No, they do not.
While it's not been proven, this one seems to be based in fact, and if you dive into Trove, sadly you'll see people in Sydney and Melbourne selling off leopard and panther cubs. So they very well could be roaming.
But they're not native to the area, are they?
They're not native. They're not native to it. It's just, are they there?
Okay, well, that's different.
Because the outback's not scary enough. Let's just throw in some big cats. And some people thought that circuses may have brought them. Other reports say that soldiers brought them.
Why would soldiers bring them?
I have no idea.
That's so weird.
Because honestly, wouldn't a soldier have other things to do? Ready for number 7?
Yep.
This one I have to explain a little bit because it's very common in North America and Europe, but I'm not sure if other places know this legend. So, number 7, the killer in the backseat of your car. A woman is driving home late at night. Maybe it's raining, maybe it's foggy, maybe it's just dark, but whatever the driving conditions, she's getting a little weirded out. Every so often you see the car behind her, which has been tailgating her, flashes their high beams at her. At first it was just annoying. Eventually though, it became downright scary. Eventually she stops. In some version she pulls into a gas station, only to have the attendant tell her there's a problem with her credit card and she needs to come into the building to sort it out. The attendant hurries her into the building, at which point he locks the door behind them. I've called the cops, he says. There's a guy in your back seat and he's got a knife. Fact or fiction?
Well, it's certainly been in a lot of movies.
It has.
Variations on the theme. I've always found it to be interesting that people don't see in their back seats.
Women are always taught to check around your vehicle and check your back seat.
Yeah, exactly. My new car, I don't see the back seat like I used to in my old cars. So I think it's more plausible with newer vehicles. The older vehicles, remember, didn't even have headrests. They had low seats. Right. And so I'm going to say that is fiction.
Well, according to Snopes, this one might actually be inspired by a true event that happened in New York in 1964 when an escaped murderer hid in the backseat of a car. The car, ironically, belonged to a police detective who shot the man.
The police detective did see the person then?
When he stopped his car, he saw the person and he originally did not see him in the backseat.
Was it a regular car or a police car? Do you know?
I think it was his regular car. I think he was off duty, but I'd have to double check. But
gotcha.
The one thing I find interesting is that the urban legend makes it a woman in the car.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll see that happen a lot with urban legends. That's a whole segment that we can do maybe if Richard lets us. Question number 8.
Ooh.
Dressed to kill, also known as the poison dress. Once this girl bought a secondhand dress to wear to her prom. She had the time of her life at the dance, and she looked fabulous, but she started to feel more and more under the weather as the night went on. She was just starting to say to her date that maybe she should go sit down when she actually passed out, and by the time they got her to the hospital, she was dead. Apparently, the gown had been robbed from a corpse and sold to the thrift shop, and when she wore it and danced in it and sweated in it, the embalming fluid seeped into her pores and caused her blood to coagulate and close up her pores, essentially asphyxiating her. Fact or fiction?
Our skin is pretty good at being a barrier for most things. Now, I do know things like the nicotine patch, for example. We can have, I think, estrogen patches and things like that. Embalming fluid, would it actually pass through our skin? What is in embalming fluid?
Some versions of the legend say that it's formaldehyde.
Ah, okay. Well, I worked with formaldehyde in my biology classes, things that have been soaked in formaldehyde, and I'm guessing we wore gloves, but I don't remember wearing gloves in my biology class. Different era.
And did you dance and sweat and die?
No, I did not. So I'm going to say fiction again. I'm just stuck on fiction.
This legend dates back at least as far as 1942 and is total fiction.
Yay, got one right.
Question 9. An albino bear was sent to the Arctic multiple times after being mistaken for a polar bear.
What? They look so different, though.
That's because you're Canadian and you know these things.
So where was it sent from?
The place varies from Alaska to British Columbia.
Okay. You would think they would know better. Oh, my goodness. But I guess if it goes back far enough in time, then they might not know better. But why would they transport it? They probably would have just shot it then. I'm leaning to total fiction.
Yeah, this has been floating around social media for a few years and it's totally false. First of all, like you say, the bears look completely different.
Yeah.
And second of all, why would they keep returning like the same bear?
I think they'd learn.
The bear would make its way all the way back just to get tranquilized and shit. Like, that's not going to happen.
Yeah. No.
That's not going to happen. But it is huge on social media, so...
Oh my goodness. That's so interesting that people will fall for that kind of stuff.
And that's why I phrased it as an albino bear, because depending on the lore that you read on the social media, it can be an albino grizzly, it can be an albino brown bear, it can be an albino black bear.
But same thing, they look very different from a polar bear.
All right, ready for the last question?
I am.
The body under the bed. A vacationing couple staying in a foul-smelling hotel room discovered a dead body hiding under their bed.
That sounds plausible. Why not?
This is a fact. Dead bodies get stashed in the box spring or the bed's pedestal more often than you'd want to believe.
Oh my.
A fair number of them are only discovered days later, usually after the new tenant complains about the persistent and disagreeable odor.
That is astounding on many levels, but not surprising, if that makes sense.
On that disturbing note, don't forget to check under your bed.
And your back seat of your car.
Always check the back seat.
And your Halloween candy.
No, that's my job.
Well, that was fun, Kat. Thanks so much for doing this, and I think we've gone way over time, so let's call it a day.
This is Kate and Allie,
the Loons from Canada,
signing off.
Hey, Adrian.
Hi, Susan. Out for some shopping, eh?
Yep, I'm stocking up on this imitation maple syrup from Australia.
Imitation? Imitation? No. You need to buy the real thing from Canada.
But I saw the TV commercial and it said that noted pancake eating expert Richard Saunders says it's the best maple syrup money can buy, and 60% of people preferred it in a blind taste test. Everyone knows it's the best.
Oh, come on, Susan. You know better than that. That's the argument from authority.
It is?
Or is it the argument from popularity? It might be another logical fallacy. I'm not sure.
Really? If only we had a way of finding out.
Hello, everyone.
Oh my, it's the skeptical fairy godmother angel from the internet.
Yes, that's right. But how did you know who I am?
I listened to the Skeptic Zone podcast. Also, didn't you used to be the tooth fairy?
Oh, yes. I remember you. I'll never forget your left upper lateral incisor. Would you like it back?
No, it's okay. You keep it.
Hey, skeptical fairy godmother angel, what are you doing here in the supermarket?
I've come to tell you that you can find out about 40 different logical fallacies on YouTube in one handy location. Listen to each one to hear an explanation and examples of how they might be used.
Oh.
Just go to tinyurl.com/logicalzone and you'll find all the logical fallacies with Michelle Bickersma with handy time codes to get to the exact one you want.
Who is Michelle Bickersma?
Just a friend of mine.
tinyurl.com/logicalzone. Thank you, skeptical fairy godmother angel. I guess you'll disappear in a puff of smoke and thunder now, eh?
Not quite yet. I have a bit of shopping to do. Susan?
Yes?
Where do I find the Australian maple syrup?
What? No. Come with me, so-called skeptical fairy. This is real maple syrup from Canada. Made with real maple.
Okay, it's Friday of the conference. I'm still at CSIcon 2024, and I have run into one of the most fabulous speakers, but he's not really going to be speaking this year. He's going to be entertaining us.
Yeah.
Who are you, sir?
Banachek. So I actually did give a talk on memory. I gave a memory seminar.
A workshop.
So
that's
a workshop.
right. That's right. I apologize.
so-
that's right.
yeah,
That counts. You know, I was afraid to attend that.
Oh, why?
Because my memory has always been awful, and I just felt like if I went to your thing and it didn't improve, because you guaranteed it, I would feel even worse.
It's techniques, unless you're auditory. I had one guy come in, and it's all based upon creating visual pictures, so you have associations, because Greeks said that they really were the first to come up and realize that memory is sort of an associative thing. You can take things from short term into long term by creating these memories, right? I mean, we all know where we were on 9/11. If you're old enough and listening to this and you were around when JFK, was shot, you remember that. You have these very graphic pictures. You remember where you were sitting, what chair you were sitting in, because these things, they meant something to you. They created an emotion in you. And if you can do that with small things, you can take things from short-term memory into long-term. Things only stay in short-term memory 5 to 30 seconds.
Oh, wow, that is short.
Unless you apply it. But
So that's the technique.
It would have worked for you, because I had them list the four different lists of words that even overlapped, and they used the linking system where you link one word with another word. They used there's 4 different systems that I used for each one of these, and they were all able to recall, except for that one guy, all
there
able
was
to
one
recall
person.
it. Well, because he's auditory, and I didn't realize it, and it
interesting.
actually made me think I need to tell people if you're an auditory person.
How do you know that? Maybe
Because
that's
he came up to me afterwards, right? I don't know how you know it, but he says he just can't visualize things. He has a hard time visualizing anything. So what he has to do is create sound. If he can create the sound, that would work for him. If somebody's saying something.
Fascinating. Fascinating.
Or noise.
Huh.
Anyway, sorry, went off on a tangent there about memory.
That's fine. I'm sorry I missed it, but I was busy during that one, and I did take the other 2 workshops.
It's all right. You needed it because you couldn't even remember what today's day was.
I started this by saying, what day are we? Yeah, jet lag, and I'm in a different time zone, and every day is bizarre when you're in Vegas.
I have the same problem. I travel performing. I had a show here in Vegas for 3 years, 837 shows. And after a while, it was just like I didn't know what day it was. And now I'm back out. I'm doing cruise ships and that, and I never know what day it is anymore. Days just don't matter.
When I interviewed you for my column, we had to screw up in the schedule, and you thought that I was saying CSIcon was the same time you were going to be on the cruise.
That's right. Yeah. I got scared there for a minute.
The cruise went well?
Cruise, they always go well. Yeah. They're self-contained. It's an easy show, so yeah.
Okay, and we at the conference are going to be entertained by you, or maybe educated, if you want to use that word.
It's more of entertainment. It's a show that I did at the Strat, except you won't have all the bells and whistles, the lighting and stuff, but we'll have the video. It's going to be interesting because I'm looking at the stage now, and there is no backstage, there's no side wings, and there's secret things that normally happen in those places. So I'm not sure how I'm going to...
That's a little inside scoop there.
Yeah, not sure how I'm going to work around that. Yeah, we'll see.
I am so looking forward to that.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Having fun.
Enjoy the rest of the conference. Yes, I absolutely am.
Me too.
All right, bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye.
It's Friday of CSIcon 2024, and I had to corral one of the best speakers I have ever seen, and I'm not just going to say today, but here at all. I think half the place at least gave you a standing ovation for your delivery.
I got to meet this guy.
So tell the Skeptic Zone audience who you are.
Hi, I'm Forrest Valkai, and I don't know who Rob is talking about right now.
No one ever stands up for speakers when they give applause here, and I've seen it twice today. Once for Steve Novella, who gave an amazing talk on how to discuss sensitive topics with skeptics, and your talk, which was on?
My talk was on how to teach evolution to a creationist. And you can hear my voice is still a little bit hoarse because I got real excited and hyphy a couple of times.
You can tell. Well, I shouldn't say that. It seems like you have some kind of theatrical background, or does this just come naturally?
A little bit of both. My dad was an entertainer, and so I grew up kind of seeing him perform. But he was a piano player, so it's not like he was up jumping around. For me, it's just I get so excited, and I want to pass that on to people and whip them up and play a little music and make them feel something about it.
It's infectious.
Yeah.
It's absolutely
If
infectious.
I was evil, I could be a preacher.
You could be. Oh my God, you could be a cult leader. Forrest.
Yes. Oh, don't get me started,
Forrest.
dude.
Oh my God, the money you could be making, and you could have like all of the women being turned over to you by their husbands.
Don't tempt me. I could be rich overnight.
So Forrest is becoming quite a thing on the YouTubes and the internets and the interwebs. Mm-hmm. So tell the folks about where they can find all your amazing product.
You can find my, I'm not going to say amazing, but you can find my stuff on YouTube or on TikTok. If you just look for Renegade Science Teacher, you'll find me, or search for my name, Forrest Valkai. Or if you want a convenient place to find everything, you can go to valkailabs.com. That's links to my YouTube, my TikTok, my Instagram, and my Patreon, where you can get literally no additional content except for like a monthly VIP meeting with me. Sometimes I send out books and stuff. I care about making all my stuff free, so anytime anybody signs up for something like Patreon or YouTube membership, I give them the dumbest VIP experience imaginable. I'll send you some emojis or something.
And you have a bunch of different YouTube channels, right? Like the one that I really like is Reacteria.
Yeah, so all of Reacteria and The Light of Evolution and the other shows that I produce are all on my personal YouTube channel. However, I am featured on a lot of other YouTube channels like The Line and The Atheist Experience and Talk Heathen. The Line has a bunch of shows that I host, Skep Talk, a Sunday show. Occasionally I host like The Hang Up, things like that. And then I also host other shows like Atheist Experience, Talk Heathen, Truth Wanted. And all of these shows are centered around taking calls and having hard discussions with people about religion, science, politics, whatever it may be. Just on my channels, though, I try to just help people learn to love science and themselves and hopefully each other a little bit as well by teaching powerful life lessons and motivational messages alongside beautiful, life-changing scientific lessons that change the way you see the world. If you were interested in questioning the reality that you weren't quite sure you wanted to be a part of in the first place, you can find me on YouTube and subscribe there.
And the last thing I want to say is that you were our guest on the Recovering from Religion weekly show, and that was fantastic.
Yeah.
And we are definitely going to have you back again, right? To give some talk like this one, specifically for our clients.
I would be happy to.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me.
And enjoy the rest of the time you have here.
Don't tell me what to do.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
I'm at the last full day of CSIcon 2024, and I'm at the morning session, and I just heard one of the most dynamic presentations I've heard it all the time I've ever come to CSIcon. And that's saying a lot because Forrest Valkai did an amazing talk yesterday. I am with Natalia Pasternak, who truly is the Jennifer Lawrence in acting and presentation of Brazil. Please tell you, I had never heard of the topic of your presentation, and you delivered it with such feeling and emotion. It was quite impressive. So please tell the Skeptic Zone audience what you talked about.
Well, first of all, I'm glad you never heard of it. Because it means that it hasn't really reached the U.S. yet. But you know how these
I
things
wasn't even
travel.
thinking of that. The yet.
Yeah,
You're right.
these things travel. So it's called family constellation. It's a pseudoscientific type of therapy, psychotherapy, that was invented in Germany by a former priest, a Catholic priest called Bert Hellinger. He invented this form of psychotherapy, which is pretty much based on family relations and family harmony, but a very traditional view of family, I mean really patriarchal, where the man is the head of the family and the wife should follow him and respect him, and the children should follow and respect both parents. So it's really rooted in patriarchal notions of what a family should look like, and it doesn't allow for any different family arrangements. So it's sexist as hell. It's really misogynist, and it's been used in Brazil in courts of law.
That was amazing. It's become part of the system.
It's become part of the system. It's used for conflict resolution, so it's usually pre-legal conflict resolution, but it's also been used in actual lawsuits and court sessions. And it re-victimizes women. It's usually used in domestic violence cases, abuse, child support, child abuse. So it's really sensitive stuff.
It puts the blame all on the victim.
It puts the blame on the victim. It's usually women and children, and in the family constellation session. So it's a kind of session with a lot of role playing, where volunteers role play the members of the family. And in those sessions, women have been forced to beg forgiveness from the aggressors in order to restore family balance.
Just to be clear, everyone's actors except for the victim themselves, and they have to stand there and be accused of things, essentially.
Exactly. And the facilitator knows what to do because he feels the quantum energy
that blew my mind.
Of the client. So it's crazy stuff. It's quantum misogyny. That is why I call the talk quantum misogyny, because that's what it is. It's misogyny with the excuse of quantum energy. And then they re-victimize women and children who have already suffered from domestic violence or child abuse, and they are forced to relive it, and they are forced to ask for forgiveness.
My God.
This is heavy stuff.
And please talk a little bit about what your organization is doing to push back on this.
So I run an NGO in Brazil called Institute Question of Science, which promotes science-based public policies, or at least we try to. And we have been on a battle against family constellation in Brazil. We have been trying to raise awareness to the dangers of using this pseudoscience in court. It's also present in the public healthcare system, so it's also used as therapy, as psychotherapy. So we have been raising awareness about that too. We published a report, like a white paper on family constellation, and it's used in as therapy and law in Brazil. We published a joint paper with the Federal Board of Psychology because they were also worried about its use in therapy. And we have been writing a lot of articles and publishing in newspapers and national magazines in Brazil to try to raise awareness and place this issue into the public debate, because it has to be debated. We have participated in Senate hearings and parliamentary inquiries. So we have been really trying to do our job, both with the communication of science to the public, but also with policy members and government officials. We sent the report to the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Women, and the Ministry of Human Rights. We also sent the report to the National Council of Justice. We are still waiting for their reply. They haven't replied yet, but we will keep pushing, and we will keep putting a lot of pressure in the system, in the court system, until they give it up.
Thank you so much for doing all of this, and again, fantastic presentation, and I'm glad I was able to attend and catch it.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Skepticon XL, the drinks are on us. We're adding some extra fizz to this year's Skeptics annual convention, Skepticon XL, November the 23rd to the 24th in Sydney. We are extending the package for the convention dinner on November the 23rd with free drinks for at least the first 3 hours, which means red wine, white wine, bubbly wine, beer, cider, soft drinks, fruit juice, and mineral water are on us, and all for the same original price. That's $90 for a 3-course meal, drinks, entertainment, the Skeptics Awards, and the chance to sit down and socialize with your fellow skeptics. The catch? The number of seats is limited. We already have a large number booked, which means the remaining places are at a premium. And we will be giving priority for any new bookings to those also booking for the convention. Yes, the drinks are on us. A great convention, a great dinner, a great time. For more information and bookings, head to skepticon.org.au. Once again to go back to the pages of Trove at trove.nla.gov.au, where we can pour through the almost endless supply of newspaper articles and journals and magazines, all searchable, going back through Australia's published history. Fair to say it's mostly newspapers, and there have been hundreds of different newspapers come and go all over Australia during those years, and luckily for us, many of them have been digitised. And this week, because I was looking around in general for supernatural, paranormal, spiritualism, that sort of thing, I stumbled, because when you go to Trove, you never know what you might find, I stumbled across an article from 1988 in the Canberra Times on the 15th of June about channeling. Now, channeling, and it still goes on today, as laughable as it seems to us now, was a huge thing in the later part of the 1980s, early part of the 1990s, I guess. This is where people sit on a stage and put on a funny voice, pretend to go into a trance and say, I am the great Wakabadoo from a little place just outside of Atlantis. I couldn't get into Atlantis, so I sort of lived there and, anyway, here's my ancient wisdom from the UFOs. Something like that. It still goes on today. Here and there. Not as big as it used to be. Ramtha was the big name, I think, all those years ago. And of course, we remember the great Carlos hoax, where James Randi was behind bringing out Jose Alvarez, as he was known at the time, to pretend to channel the great spirit of Carlos. And that's a story for another day, but you can certainly look up Carlos hoax on the internet or YouTube and see all about that. It was done to show how gullible the Australian media could be to a juicy story without bothering to check the facts. Anyway, I've come across this article. It's in a section called Midweek Magazine, and it's by Don Laycock. And Don Laycock at the time was on the Canberra Committee of the Australian Skeptics, and was also a linguist. And the article reads, "A dithery, dead alchemist visits." On the wet night of Monday, May 16, 3 members of the committee of the Canberra branch of the Australian Skeptics sat through a 45-minute video of a pleasant woman from California who gave the impression of going into a trance and then proceeded to mouth modern occult platitudes in a husky pseudo-French accent. She was, as all the associated literature told us, being taken over in a, quote, full-body manifestation, end quote. The word in the other context would be possessed by the spirit of an, quote, ascended master, end quote. A dithery alchemistic charlatan who during the course of his life in the 18th century went by the name of the Comte de Saint-Germain. For the skeptics, it was all in the night's work, and we tried not to look too bored, as the channellers, one Azina Ramanda peddled a philosophy that was a blend of Eastern mysticism and Ayn Rand libertarianism, with biblical-style phrases like, quote, "They truly understand not, it is themselves they are gazing upon." Sounds like a Deepak Chopra phrase generator, doesn't it? We read on, alternating with the jargon of the New Age Californian like, quote, "Mother Earth birthing," end quote, and, quote, "live within your now," end quote, and, quote, "multi-versatile aspects of reality," end quote. That's exactly what you would get out of a Deepak Chopra phrase generator. It says here, the latter phrase pronounced in a totally American way. And I suspect that means that instead of the word multi is pronounced multi, like semi-trailer. For the other 10 or so members of the audience, however, it was all deadly serious. They could, quote, "feel the energy," end quote, radiating from the woman on the video. They accepted without question that the Comte de Saint-Germain had been over 300 years old when he died, and that he could give advice on money management, sexuality, and personal development, and that when Azina Ramanda's soul left her body and went to another plane, it was still attached to her body by a, quote, "silver cord," end quote. All this took place at a recently opened New Age Centre in Briley Street, Weston, called, quote, "Open Mind," end quote. Their publication, Openings, shows much more than an open mind. It shows a tendency to believe absolutely everything, with courses on meditation, tarot cards, self-hypnosis, alternative medicine, chakra balancing, and mind over money. But back to the, quote, Germain, end quote, which is the affectionate way everyone referred to the manifested Count. For a moment, I thought I had stumbled on a hotbed of feminists. In the real world, he was a historical person, though details of his origins and background are scanty. In the second quarter of the 18th century, he was wandering Germany, selling an elixir claimed to arrest the progress of old age. But he came to realize that richer pickings were to be had at the court of Louis XV of France, and he moved there around 1754. He delighted the women of the court with hints that he was more than 100 years old, and his elixir sold for large sums. He also did a trade on the side in restoring flawed diamonds, but most people were content to give him their patronage for nothing more than his sophisticated conversation in a number of different languages, and his carefully dropped intimations that he was an alchemist and Rosicrucian of note and could transmute base metals into gold. He died in retirement at Schleswig in 1784. Nothing of the historical Saint-Germain comes across in the video we saw in Canberra. His jargon is very much a product of the 1980s, and yet there were considerable parallels between New Age mysticism and the occult preoccupants of 18th century France. In both instances, the previous century was one of, quote, serious, end quote, occultism, in that the practitioners were scholars who had intensely studied their subject. But in the Aquarian Age and at the courts of Louis XV and XVI, the original message was too hard for the housewife seers and the aristocratic women, and the whole terminology became diffused into a lot of meaningless but impressive-sounding phrases about, quote, astral planes, power resources, and constant nowness, end quote. A question about the accent of Azina Ramanda, posing as Saint-Germain, was brushed off with the words, quote, language doesn't matter, end quote. And I'll just break in here to say quickly, this reminds me of the excuses they often have where they're channeling someone from 20, 30,000, whatever years ago. And the question is, well, what's your original language sound like? Can you speak in that? And they say, oh, I can only speak in the language that the host is, or the host knows, or something like that. Very, very convincing. We read on. But if a reincarnated spirit can master the jargon of Malibu Beach, it would not be asking too much for him to speak either in a modern English accent or else in a consistent accent. In fact, the accent was mainly intended for stage French, but there was a strong hint of Anglo-Indian. Any accent will do if it is exotic enough and the listeners are gullible enough. A real personage, speaking with an accent, is at least consistent with it. But Azina's Saint-Germain kept slipping, and 5 different R sounds were noted in the course of the revelations. A French R, a British R, an American R, as well as W, relationship, and I, liberty. The Count also seems to have forgotten his Latin. The personable young man who showed the video said that he was previously known as the, quote, Comte Sanctus Gemenius, end quote. This revelation must have come from the Count himself, as surely nobody else would dare make up such bodgy Latin. And bodgy meaning false, meaning bogus. And it goes on to say, correct is Comus Sancti Germani. I think it says the text is a little worn here. The aristocratic title was a phony one anyway. The audience was invited to buy tickets with Ramanda/Saint-Germain in Sydney in July at a cost of $15 for an introductory session or $135 for a one-day intensive session. Everyone except the skeptics seemed to think that this was, quote, very reasonable, end quote. In fact, as we were told, the sessions will eventually be free, but there will be a book to buy as well as cassettes and videos. One wonders if there is anything too silly for New Agers to believe, especially after the recent Carlos hoax in Sydney, where a fake channeler came over every bit as convincing as Azina Ramanda. We were told that Saint-Germain's energy had a hand in framing the U.S. Declaration of Independence, and that perhaps because one of his earlier incarnations was the prophet Samuel, he was the original Uncle Sam. Other previous reincarnations apparently included Joseph, the father of Jesus, Columbus, Francis Bacon, and a Greek philosopher whose name we did not catch. We were further told that when Saint-Germain is manifesting, he drinks a lot of alcohol. I see. But he transmutes it into water before he leaves Azina's body, so that she is unaffected. Maybe. But the historical Saint-Germain never ate or drank in public. Perhaps the secret of his longevity was merely a healthy diet. If Azina, on the other hand, ends up in the long run as a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, I wonder what her followers will say then. Probably nothing. By then, they will have moved on to another cult figure of the occult. And again, that was from the Canberra Times, dated the 15th of June, 1988, and as written here in the article, it was not long after the famous Carlos hoax, again dealing with so-called channelers. And to round this off, we have a story here, a very short story from the Sydney Morning Herald, dated the 23rd of April 1989, so a few years after, in fact 1 year after. Spirit of the Night. And night is spelled K-N-I-G-H-T. Want to part with $120? Toddle down to Darling Harbour Conference Centre next weekend to hear a Californian lady mouth husky words supposedly coming from a 35,000-year-old warrior spirit from Atlantis named Ramtha. Last time Miss J.Z. Knight was here in 1987, Ramtha, Ms. Knight has patented the name, predicted a massive wave would wash over Sydney. Some of the 550 who paid to watch the show actually headed for the hills. Organiser Gitta Bellin, who lives inland of the Blue Mountains, said she did not expect to see as many people this visit, but hastened to add that this had nothing to do with the no-show by the tidal wave. Surprisingly, Ms. Bellin said Ms. Knight Ramtha would not be talking to the press during her visit, as she said reporters didn't always ask her nice questions. This is unfair, as all Jay-Z and Ramtha want to do is bring joy to the world, said Ms. Bellin. The old fella has certainly brought joy to former housewife Ms. Knight. She lives in a $1 million mansion and in 1986 made $3 million from appearances, books and videos. And how times have changed. I think everybody who is fortunate enough to own a house in Sydney these days probably lives in a $1 million mansion. In fact, I scarcely think you would be able to buy a freestanding house, at least for less these days. There we are, some of the references over the years to channeling, something you really don't hear much about anymore. Though I notice on my occasional mindless adventures into TikTok, there's a certain bald-headed channel that comes up from time to time, and I think our friends over at Ross and Carey did an episode. Ross and Carey did an episode about that particular channel not so long ago. So it's still out there a little bit. But I think long ago, society in general decided to switch to another channel, so to speak. But you too can channel all sorts of things when you visit Trove at trove.nla.gov.au, because when you go there and you put in your search, you never know what you might find.
Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone. We hope Richard Saunders can get himself back on deck for next week's episode. Come on, Richard, you can do it. Oh, hang on, I think we've got him on the phone. Oh, my back hurts. Yes, well, he'll be back next week when he's back feeling better. But I know Richard will want to thank you, all you supporters. And look, Richard doesn't do this directly, but come on, hit the tin, people. Just a one-off donation or something, because as I like telling you, you can't assume something will be there tomorrow if you don't support it today. Now, chip in via Patreon, PayPal each week, and without you, there would be no Skeptic Zone. It would sound like this. But for this week, this is Maynard signing off from Maynard International Studios Annex. That's right next door to the Gilmore Girls Memorial Pavilion. You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast. Please visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for episodes and show notes with links going back to 2008. You can follow the Skeptic Zone on Facebook, X, TikTok and YouTube by clicking the links at our homepage, together with links to support the show financially via Patreon or PayPal. The Skeptic Zone is an independent production. The views and opinions expressed by our guests are not necessarily those of the Skeptic Zone podcast or any other skeptical organisation.
Now it's time at the end of the show, after the music, to play the dice game. I'm in a room full of skeptics. They're all playing whist or gin rummy or poker or some game I've never heard of.
Cards Against Humanity.
And Susan Gerbick's here. Hello, Susan.
Hi, Richard. We're playing Cards Against Humanity, and we're now going to do the dice game.
So I've got a D6 this time. It's it's one of the casino dice I got from a gift shop. You know, they sell ex-casino dice. Susan, what number do you think it's going to come up?
Let me think. How many's on the die?
6.
6? There's 6 numbers on there. I think I'll pick 5.
Well, that's something new. Everybody, there's so many people in the room. Just say the number to yourself, what you think it's going to be.
How many people are in this room?
Too many. And
5.
5 in the back.
There's like 900 people.
4 over there. All pick a number, all right?
Yeah.
Ready? Here it comes.
But they're going to... You put your fingers up. That way we know you can't cheat whenever he rolls it.
And
oh my God, let me take a picture. It's like a sea of hands in here.
And you people playing at home too, put your fingers up. Okay, here it comes. Roll number 1.
5.
Susan, can you have a look and tell me what that is?
It is a 5! I am on it. Okay.
All right.
Okay, honestly, it is a 5.
It was
Heather
a 5.
can see. Yeah, Carolyn can see. Okay.
Roll number 2. Once again, everybody choose a number. Susan, what number? Oh, 5. All right. 2's over there, 1 over there. Roll number 2 coming up. It is?
A 5! Wait, is this a trick die? Did you put a trick? It is a trick die. I have a feeling Greg was involved in this or something. He's looking guilty back there.
So
I was wondering why it was a D6.
the winning numbers this week are 5 and 5. Thank you, everyone.